You're listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, make sure to find us on Instagram and Facebook at Range Minded Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We'd also really appreciate it if you left us some feedback from wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you can get your podcast from. This is episode 72, where we talk about the differences between indoor and outdoor shooting ranges and which one may be better for you depending on your set of circumstances. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy episode 72 of Range Minded, the indoor range versus the outdoor range. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and as always, joined by
the one and only fabulous, ever amazing Steve Zimmerman.
I thought you were going to say Scuba Steve.
Oh, well, I could say Scuba Steve.
Yeah, Scuba Steve Zimmerman. How about that?
Actually, that is my employee profile on the cash registers.
Scuba Steve?
Yeah.
Oh, now
I'm sure it never got changed.
Yeah. Hey, at least you have one. I don't even have one. They don't let me near the cash registers.
Yeah, we don't let the help touch it, right?
That's right. It's only for important people. But
you're important, Mark. You're very important.
I don't know about that, but
you're a pivotal part of this operation.
Oh, sure. That's what they tell me.
Well, we got to keep telling you that. That's all.
But that's we're actually going to be talking about shooting ranges themselves today.
Yeah, which is like we mentioned off air. We haven't ever really talked. I mean, we've alluded to it here and there, I'm sure, between some of the episodes, but never had one dedicated to shooting ranges.
No, and we I think we've talked about indoor and outdoor ranges before, like you said, in passing, but I don't think we've actually, had a discussion about the differences between indoor and outdoor ranges and the pros and cons, because, there are, quite a few differences,
And some of them are a big deal kind of difference.
Yeah, and can really depending on what you're wanting to get out of your range trip, or the time you have to invest in your range trip. That's really going to dictate maybe where you want to go.
Yes, indeed.
So
how much gas money you brought with you?
Right, exactly. So, obviously we might be a little biased because Independence is an indoor range, and maybe we'll get to this at the end, but Independence is actually kind of a unique indoor range because there's a lot of, I think, things that you can do at Independence that you can't do at most indoor ranges.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get to some of the obvious parts of it, but yeah. It's Idaho itself has been able to grant Independence a nice home too, with the rights that the state affords. So that's a big plus.
That's very true too, because there's a lot of different rules and regulations, that surround, not only firearm shops, but shooting ranges as well. So, but let's just jump right in. One of the first things that I thought of between an indoor and outdoor range is weather.
Yes. It's always sunny at an indoor range.
Always sunny and 72 at Independence, no matter what, rain or shine, all year round. Honestly, it could be storming outside like a thunderstorm, and we probably wouldn't even know because the whole building's built of concrete.
Yeah, and it's somewhat quiet inside anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't count the shooting going on, it's quiet.
Except for the shooting, but so that means that at outdoor range, your outdoor range might not be open year round. Or if it is, you have to, dress for the occasion. You'll have to put on, winter clothes and gloves, and that might affect your shooting if you never shot in gloves before, or if you're cold, or if you're hot, or if it's windy, or.
And that's definitely true when it comes to like reloading. If you're doing some kind of scientific testing, whether it be for your optics or you're building a specific gun or designing a load for that gun, whatever, there are some obvious things about an indoor range that make it fantastic because you never have to worry about what's going on. The atmospheric conditions are always consistent.
Right. It's much more, like you said, scientific of a of a place, because you can go to the same range. Well, you can be at the same range over like an hour, and the wind could change speed. It can change direction. The humidity could change as the day goes on, and that could affect your, like you said, if you're working hand loads or doing long distance or something like that, that can really affect, or even sighting in a firearm. That can really affect the outcome.
Absolutely. And a lot of times I'd encourage people on the 100-yard range, which really is one of the unique things about Independence, because we have that 100-yard indoor range. There's not a lot of those around.
No.
You really have a chance to design that load and actually get to a good measurable distance to really get some good data, which is super nice. I mean, I don't do any reloading. I've got some friends that are probably a little bit anal about what they do, but I understand they're trying to be precise with their long guns. So it's nice for them. In fact, another thing that made me think of that too while I'm talking is we've actually had, I'm not going to mention his name or who he works for, but there's a gentleman in the Boise Valley that works for a major gun manufacturer, like one of the top names. And his job is to just product test. So they'll come up with a certain barrel or something. And he actually, we made some arrangements for him. He'll come into the range and he can, product test without any interference. And he knows everything is perfect inside that range.
Right. And the conditions are going to be the same no matter what. That's got to be, what a tough job that must be.
Oh, and I've often asked him if he needed help.
Yeah. Do you need an assistant or something? Or how do you plan on retiring anytime soon? Can maybe know somebody to fill that job, or 200.
Well, the nice thing is he has some. When this company was working on some handguns, he brought some stuff in and he let me talk to him, and I won't, like I say, I'm not going to say what company he works for, but he has a lot of other manufacturers' guns there too that, they reference off of and test, one compared to the other. And he has an arsenal, the original arsenal from Europe, the Strike One, which is one of my guns I would love to buy.
Really?
And I will have one. And there's an American, Salient or somebody's making it now, but this is one from Lithuania, or I can't remember where they're from Eastern Bloc. It's a legit European gun that he was able to get his hands on.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, they are freaking cool. And he let me shoot it.
Nice.
He actually said, "Hey, let me know if you want to borrow one of these guns. I'll let you borrow them for a couple of days." I'm like, "No, that's probably not a good idea."
Yeah, right. Let's see how many rounds I can shoot through in a couple of days.
I may lose them in a boating accident.
I don't know what happened. But to go back to the weather a little bit, the weather's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I'm not saying it's a pro or a con, because, if you want to try shooting in the winter or in the rain or in the heat, you can get a little coddled if you shoot only indoor.
Well, I think it's important because you're going to fight how you train, right? So I think it's intelligent to work on your skills, develop your skills initially in a class where it's, like in an indoor range. But especially if you're law enforcement or even military, it's good to get out in the elements and practice those skills outside, because every gunfight's different.
Right, and the chances are supremely low that a gunfight's going to happen in a gun shop or at a shooting range. It's going to be outside, and if you're carrying every day, that means you're carrying through heat and cold and humidity and wind and rain and whatever. And so, like, for example, if it's raining, have you ever tried to draw from the holster in a rainy situation and made sure that you've gotten a good grip on that gun? It could get pretty slippery pretty quick in the rain.
Well, and not only that, like, if you think it's tough with the sweaty hands, but if your hands are drenched, it's going to be difficult.
Right. And so going to an outdoor range, can really help you train in a variety of different situations. It's a lot less sterile than an indoor range. So. Yes. Or like I said, shooting with gloves or shooting in the cold, or, because your gun might operate differently too in the cold or in the heat or anything like that, depending on what kind of lubricants you use or what kind of ammo you use. I think we probably talked about it before too, but, winter coats can actually, make bullets a lot less lethal. So if somebody's attacking you or coming up on you and they have a winter coat on, you might need to know how to operate that, firearm with gloves on, or get it out from under your, heavy winter coat or parka or whatever, and know that your ammo is going to perform the way it needs to.
Yeah, like I said, you need to be out there and training. And there's some other nice things about shooting outside is and it's still clean air inside the range, but it's definitely cleaner outside when you're shooting. You're not stuck next to somebody else either that's shooting and gassing up a place.
Sure.
But something that maybe you didn't think about is the sound pollution, I guess you could put it, compared to being inside of a shooting range and outside.
No, I didn't think about that all that much. If you've shot inside, you know how loud it can be, but shooting outside, it's not quieter, but because the sound isn't bouncing around a building inside of a building, it's a lot easier on your ears, I would say.
And the concussion, the pressure wave is really what gets you, not so much the sound, but you're inside of a pressurized room, and then when you add more pressure of an explosion, that's really kind of what gets you inside of a range.
Yeah, and that's one thing that people might not know. Aren't the ranges like positively pressured, I think?
Yes. So it forces all the stuff down, down range. So yeah, there is, and I couldn't tell you like what the air pressure is inside and outside, but it is significant. You usually can tell by trying to open those doors. Yeah, especially the 100-yard range.
Yeah, that's why a door might be easier to open. Sometimes they have in indoor ranges they have two sets of doors where you have to go through one and then go through another to get into the range. That's what ours kind of is like, except it's a little more spread out.
Yeah, the vestibule is just huge. That's the difference.
Right. But if you have a dozen people on an indoor range all shooting, at the same time, and you move those people outside, it's going to be a lot easier on your ears. And I mean, honestly, you can get farther away from it and not even have to wear ear protection until you get up, closer to the line.
Yeah.
So you should still obviously wear ear protection. I mean, one of the first times I shot a rifle was not with ear protection because I was an idiot. But granted, it was outside. But my ears definitely were ringing.
You learned something that day, didn't you?
Sure did. Got to use ear protection no matter what. So.
Yes, you do, or it hurts.
It really does. And like you said, it's the concussion too. It's not just the sound; it's the pressure wave from that explosion going out in all directions.
Yeah, don't do dumb.
Yeah, don't do dumb. Also, I mean, if you're shooting an AR, in the shot in an indoor range, that concussion is going to be a lot bigger for you, and it's going to bother your neighbors. I mean, I'm sure everybody, if you've been to a range and somebody's got either a full auto or they've got a super short AR with a really loud, muzzle brake on it or something like that, you can hear it and you can feel it, especially if you're like right next to them.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many times I'd have people come out complaining, saying, "Oh, this guy is shooting his AR. It's so loud." And I try to be courteous as much as possible, but then I think you're in an indoor shooting range.
Right.
It's loud. That's an inherent risk that you've accepted to take by showing up today.
Yeah, and you're shooting as well, which is also probably just as loud. I mean, the thing is, actually, I learned this little tidbit when I was helping somebody shoot the Barrett, the 50 cal that we have, is that the best place to be usually when shooting a gun is right behind it, because that's where, the sound necessarily isn't going to be. It's around the gun that's going to be a lot louder. So, or that shockwave, like you talked about, so if you're behind the trigger on the Barrett, it's not going to be that bad. But if you're on the side or behind it or whatever, you're going to be hearing those sound waves and hearing them bounce off and feeling that concussion a lot more.
Yeah. In fact, that gun is totally different when you shoot outside.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah. It's probably not nearly as loud. And like we talked about, there's the space for the sound to go and the concussion to go farther out and away. But one thing that indoor ranges have, at least externally over outdoor ranges, is that they don't make as much noise far away. Does that make sense? It's kind of hard to explain, but if you live mainly let's say within half a mile of an outdoor shooting range, you're probably going to hear gunfire all the time, or at least when they're open. So it's a little bit more distracting to neighbors. You can't really put an outdoor range in a populated area, because you got people complain, or there was a place in Illinois, actually. I remember they had to fight to stay open because too many neighbors were complaining about the gunfire all the time, and luckily they were able to stay open. But as more development happens and urban sprawl happens, those spread out to outdoor ranges. And I mean, you can put an indoor range theoretically anywhere as long as you, take the proper precautions with the building and everything like that. But I mean, Jared talked about it. I mean, Independence is right by a school and an apartment complex and another school. And that's like the last place that I think you'd put a gun range, but you can't really tell. You can't hear it, No,
and that's exactly what my mind went to, is when he talked about that gal that complained.
Oh, yeah.
To no avail, because it wasn't even loud outside.
Yeah, it was like the cars, I think, were louder than the gunshots from her apartment or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but that's the difference with sound and concussion and things like that. And that kind of leads me to my next point, is about space. You usually have more space to move around and to do stuff at an outdoor range than you do on an indoor range. And that's just due to space concerns,
Obviously, that's very difficult to do in an indoor range.
Right.
Because like you say, you have your left and right limitations are so drastic that you have 2 or 3 degrees really of movement laterally that's just pointless.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it in terms of a pie, you have maybe, like an eighth of a slice of pie or whatever, that you can shoot laterally, at an indoor range, because you have your one booth and you're usually shooting statically. You can't really move around. But then when you think about an outdoor range, you almost, depending on the situation, you could have up to half of that pie to shoot,
Yeah.
So.
And that being said, right, I mean, we've set up that kind of stuff, scenarios in our range, and it works, but you just can't have as much fun.
Right. And we just don't have the space. I mean, yeah, there's a reason why they, like you said, USPSA and İDPA is all outside, because you can set up a lot more dynamic of drills and a lot more targets, and you can move around a lot more. But even just if you're going to shoot off a bench or whatever, you usually have a lot more space to bring out rifles and long guns and shotguns. IDPA and USPSA or have their competitions outside. You can set up a lot more dynamic of stages and drills and all that. But even just if you're going to shoot like static and you're going to bring a couple of firearms or whatever, you have a lot more room to spread out. There's usually a bench that you can sit there, on, and the distances are a lot longer usually too.
Yeah, and it is kind of nice for that reason to get out on an outdoor range, because you can spend a little bit more time. Most of them have shelters to where your guns aren't going to get soaking wet or anything. There are some out there that some of the older ranges that are a little under par, but there's some grants available even for those ranges that can be updated.
Yeah, that can be a mark against outdoor ranges, is that that maybe it's not as clean or not as nice as an indoor range, although I've been to some indoor ranges that have seen better days, but you're definitely out in the elements more, so you have to you definitely have to prepare for that a little bit more, I think, in terms of comfort or facilities, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're usually a little bit more run down. That's not actually true. I was going to say usually indoor ranges are more modern and that kind of thing, but they're really not. I mean, indoor ranges have been around for, 50 years. I guess the technology is a little newer as far as air handling units and house cleaning practices, but there's some really old indoor shooting ranges out there.
Yeah. And, like we talked about with Jared, to go back to ventilation a little bit, I mean, it costs a lot of money to A, install those new ventilation systems, and B, to even run the ventilation systems, whether they're new or old, because they have to be on basically the entire time anybody's shooting.
Yes.
And so imagine having to retrofit an old range with brand new HVAC equipment. And that's why if you've ever been to an older range, or maybe the range that you go to all the time, and you blow your nose at the end of it or whatever, you kind of blow out a little bit of black, as gross as it sounds, because that air is not getting circulated as well as it can.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. And I know I've shared it before. Like I've walked into shooting ranges and walked right back out, indoor ranges, because I will not spend time inside those buildings.
Yeah, you can just tell usually the when you see kind of the unburned powder like blow off, out of the barrel or whatever. Usually, that hangs in the air, and at Independence, thankfully, since we have like brand new HVAC equipment, you can't even really tell most of the time. You can spend a few hours in there in any of the ranges, whereas if you spent that amount of time in another range, you'd probably not be feeling all that great.
Yeah, and it's true, because you really don't feel good after a while once you hang out in those places.
Yeah, because it's all the lead. I mean, that's what it is. It's the lead and the dust and all that kind of stuff that's getting into your system. And I think we've talked about that before, about hygiene at the range, and not trying your best to not ingest any of that lead.
Which doesn't sound like fun, dying from lead poisoning.
No, I don't want to do that. I'd rather do other things than die from lead poisoning.
One thing that is totally different from an outdoor range than an indoor range, and I talk about this when we do the RSO class, is usually, depending on the range, there may not be an RSO there. If there is supervision, it's usually one person that's sitting in a tower or an office watching cameras or just overseeing each shooting position from a central location. So that's something that people may not be used to if you've never shot on an outdoor range, that you can't just go out and change targets anytime you want. Like at Independence, you just recall the target. You don't ever have to move. It's kind of like having the remote control and changing channels. Whereas an outdoor range, I mean, it's all analog. There's no digital there. You gotta move.
Yeah.
And they don't like it if you move downrange to change a target.
No, yeah. If you've never been to an outdoor range,
you have to wait.
Yeah, you have to wait. Usually it's about and it varies from range to range, but it's about 15, 20 minutes, and they'll actually call the range cold, and then that's when you can go change your targets and check out, your the holes in the paper and everything like that. But outside of that, a couple minutes in between every 15, then you have to wait. So if you get there and there's not a cold range at the moment, you're going to have to wait before they call it.
Yeah, and you could be waiting too long.
You could
really, especially if it's cold outside and there's nothing for you to do, and you're just sitting there waiting. Maybe you just wasted money going to an outdoor range when you could have drove 10 minutes closer and spent a little bit more money.
Yeah, and gotten right on
and
the
had
range.
have it to have a nice conditioned space. But what do I know? Maybe I am a little biased, I suppose.
Well, the other thing is that, and to be fair, you might have to wait at an indoor range too. Let's say they're completely full and you might have to wait. I mean, people have had to wait up to an hour at Independent just because we've been that busy.
Yeah, it does happen. Some of that I think is a little bit of novelty. People just checking it out.
Sure.
But honestly, there really is so much convenience coming into an indoor range. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're not dependent on anybody else, really. Like you said, you walk in, you have your lane, you set up your target, you put it out to the distance you want, you can call it back with the target retriever pretty easily, and our fancy targets can do a couple of drills and stuff like that. And as opposed to an outdoor range, you have to walk out to the cardboard and staple your target to the cardboard, and then you walk all the way back.
Hope it's not raining again, then it ruins your paper.
Yeah, or hope it's not windy, and hope that you didn't run out of staples because you only have a couple of minutes. But you know what? I will say that is probably about the safest way you can do it at an outdoor range. And when I've taken my dad shooting to an outdoor range, he actually enjoyed that a lot more than an indoor range for some reason. He liked that he knew nobody was shooting, that nobody had to worry about anything, that you had plenty of time to go. And it's like, they're not going to give you like 30 seconds to hustle out 100 yards, put your target up, and come back. They give you about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But he just liked the routine.
Got time. And I really do like shooting outside. I don't know. There's just something about it, especially if you're, back where you're kind of by yourself, maybe not necessarily on a shooting range, a formal range, but you're back shooting at your targets you set up at a good backstop where nobody's going to get hurt or anything, obviously. But it is kind of nice. It's almost relaxing in a way.
Yeah, that brings up a good point too, is that maybe you're at an outdoor range where there's not a lot of people, or you're shooting maybe on BLM, like public land, or maybe you're shooting out in your backyard. It can be a lot more relaxing. You don't have to deal with people and loud guns, right next to you or anything like that. But there may only be one RSO on that outdoor range, or you have to be that RSO, and you have to, make sure that you're shooting at, a proper backstop, and that those bullets aren't going to go past where you want them to go.
Yeah.
So there's a little more responsibility, I'd say, in that regard.
Yeah. But if you're a quality gun owner anyways, like maybe that's not the right way to put it. But if you're a good steward to the Second Amendment, you're going to understand those rules anyways, and you're going to be actively involved in making sure that you're not going to cause any problems. Right.
You're going to, as a responsible person, you're going to be observing those already. But something just to keep in mind, because, I remember, if you go out to BLM land around here, there's all kinds of places to shoot or whatever, but you have to make sure that there's a backstop, because those bullets can go a mile or more and still be lethal. And I think there are some people who go out and shoot and don't think about that, and you might hear bullets whizzing by you.
Yeah, and that's scary. I've never personally had that happen to me, but I know, and I think I've even told this story on here before, I know people that have had that happen to them out on the desert south of Boise.
Yeah, so that's something you got to be aware of. And then on top of that, if you go to an outdoor range that maybe it's a public free outdoor range, because there are a couple of those around, at least around this area, there might not be anybody on duty. So you have to be really responsible there. And, it might be awkward or not a great, might put you in a weird spot, but if people are acting unsafe or whatever, there's nobody really to kind of right their wrongs except for you. And that's if you want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it can be bad.
Yeah. Especially and what you mentioned earlier, your point about driving, a longer distance or whatever, usually outdoor, and it depends on where you live, but outdoor ranges can be farther away because they have to be away from people. But if you live in a rural area, it might actually be harder to get to an indoor range. So I'd say that's a wash.
But honestly, over here in southeastern Idaho, there's a lot of farmers. There's a lot of family-owned property that, hundreds of thousands of acres, or at least thousands of acres. And usually those folks don't go out any other place than their own property to shoot anyways.
Right.
So like when we got this range involved down here in Idaho Falls, the market is kind of skewed a little bit because these people are so used to shooting on their own property or BLM or wherever that they don't really want to spend the money. They're willing to drive and save. Well, they're not even really saving anything because they're spending the money in fuel.
Right.
But the perceived value is different, when they just shoot where they don't have to pay to shoot, if that makes sense.
Well, they already paid for the gas, so why would you pay more money to somebody? You know what I mean? Pay money out of pocket. I guess you already have the gas on hand.
But they'll drive an hour, out in the sticks when they could have, spent that much money in fuel just shooting at the range.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And that's something that we haven't touched on yet either, is price. If you have your own land and you can shoot for free, hey, that's great, man. I'm jealous of you.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be fantastic. But if you have, you don't have that option, you're going to have to pay to shoot. And usually I would say that indoor ranges are on average more expensive than outdoor ranges.
Yeah, absolutely, because of the overhead.
Right, there's more.
They have to accommodate for everything they've built.
There's more people to pay. There's HVAC to deal with. There's just to keep the lights on. Well,
and hazardous disposal too. I mean, that's something that most people don't ever think about, is those filters, the concentrated, projectiles in the berms. All that stuff has to be, disposed of properly, and that takes a lot of time and money to get that stuff figured out. which most people don't even think about or don't care about. But I know I've had to do that. 2 separate facilities, try to hunt down where everything needs to go and do it legally and safely. And it's expensive. Yeah. It's a lot of money.
And environmentally friendly too, because it's a lot of heavy metal and a lot of stuff that you don't just want to throw into the dumpster.
Yeah. And I don't think, I love Jared to death, but I think that's one thing that maybe that didn't really get relayed to him when he started the range, because I caught a lot of grief. It's like, why are you spending all this money? And I was like, because we can't just go to the dump and throw this away.
Well, but
it took a long time to teach him, like, look, this is how it has to go.
Yeah. But that's a testament to your point where you said people, the general people just don't think about that. And until you're faced with that problem, then that's what you got to, figure out.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I don't want to make this like an OSHA or an EPA broadcast, but outdoor ranges have the same kind of problem. They obviously don't have to worry about filters, but the money that you're usually paying or your membership dues that you're paying for an outdoor range, if you're squawking about the price of that, well, those berms have to be mined every so often as well. And actually, that is a far bigger process than what indoor ranges have to do, because they have to excavate and take all that dirt and sand and gravel out. And it has to be done. There's only a few contractors in the country that do it.
Yeah, and I imagine it's not cheap.
It's a nightmare. No, it is not cheap. And I'll tell you this much, the EPA is heavily involved when that process takes place.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it's expensive.
Well, and the other thing too is just even cleaning up brass, I think, is easier on an indoor range, because you only have so much room that you have to deal with. And, like you have a polished concrete surface, so you just kind of squeegee it up and pile it up and then put it where it needs to go. And granted, it still gets, disposed of and deposited wherever it needs to go. But at the same time, and that's expensive. But in an outdoor range, I mean, you're mixing your brass with, gravel and dirt and whatever. And there's a lot of people who don't pick up their own brass.
Well, there's mechanical devices that can be used it's not magnetic, unfortunately. I mean, that would be perfect, but there's mechanical devices out there that, like these rolling broom things that have these weird rubber fingers that, pick up the brass. They're kind of cool.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
They can be used on indoor and outdoor ranges alike. So there's stuff out there. And like for us, for example, we use our brass, that goes back to the company that we bought all of our range equipment for, and we use that as an investment or a credit. I guess that's what a credit towards repairing whatever we have at the range. And I get, a lot of people when I was there all the time, they would be mad at me, or they wouldn't be mad, but they'd question why don't you let me buy some brass from you? Because I can't. I mean, it's not. There's actually a health issue there that I have to worry about and protect the store, because I can't have you going rummaging through a lead-laden barrel in the back of the building.
Right. Or you can't.
Doesn't work.
Yeah. And usually, I mean, if you're shooting your own brass, you can pick that up as long as you're not, in anybody else's way or crossing the line or anything like that. But still, you're picking it up off the ground, which, I mean, if your range hasn't been cleaned in a while, and we clean our ranges every night, but, there could be a lot of lead and crap on there that you don't want to get on your hands,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we've talked about that in range etiquette as far as hygiene is concerned. So I don't know if we need to beat that dead horse, but it is super, super important that you wash your hands after the range. And that's why we have that setup provided in the vestibule.
Well, and that's important for indoor and outdoor ranges, because even though you're outdoors and things, things get spread out a lot more, whatever, you're still going to get, gunpowder and stuff and lead on your hands. And, if you go out to the parking lot at an outdoor range to eat a sandwich, you're probably going to get some lead on that sandwich. You don't want to do that.
Oh, there's more than just probably about it. You will. There's, and it's not the bullet that's the problem. A lot of people, well, it's the bullet. And look, I'm shooting jacketed. Yeah, there's going to be a high concentration of lead in that projectile, but most of that goes down range. You're not messing with it unless it's a cast bullet, I guess. But really, the problem is in your primers and your propellants, and that's where you get a lot of lead buildup and residue from.
Right.
And most people don't think about that either.
Well, and a lot of that comes out of the barrel after the bullet's already left the gun or out of the ejection port or whatever. I mean, you can see the residue on your gun after a hefty day of shooting.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the cylinder. Look at the cylinder of your revolvers after you're done shooting.
Yeah, they're dirty, very dirty. So, but another thing I thought of that's a difference between indoor and outdoor is, going back to cost a little bit. The other thing about cost is that you do have, while it may be more expensive, you do have more amenities at an indoor range. You usually a shooting range has a gun store or an ammo store attached to it in some way, shape, or form. And I think there's even some where there's, like place to get coffee or whatever.
Yeah. There's usually, in fact, there's a nice range in Salt Lake, TNT guns or TNT range or whatever it is. That's pretty cool. They actually have a cafe where you can get burgers and stuff inside the range, not in the shooting portion, but in the facility, which is pretty cool. And that's kind of being more and more popular with the new ranges coming out. But you're right.
I think that's smart.
There's usually a store attached to the ranges. There's usually rentals at indoor ranges where there's not commonly at an outdoor range. I'm sure there's outdoor ranges that do have them. So you usually have a lot more fun at an indoor range.
Yeah, I was going to say the opportunity that you have to try out new guns, to rent guns, full auto, for example, is something that we have at Independence that you can get at other, ranges all around the country, depending on where you're at, but not really going to necessarily find that at an outdoor range. And you're not even going to really find rentals at an outdoor range. And I would even say that some ranges, you're not going to find anything. You're going to have to bring everything in. So if once you're out of ammo, you're done for the day. Or if you forgot targets or you're out of targets, you're done for the day. There's no place to go buy them.
Yeah, that's true. And that's what's really nice about having a facility, like an indoor range, like Independence. It sounds like this is an Independence plug, and maybe it really is. but everything's there. It's a one-stop shop. Like, you run out of target, or you shoot your target up, there's targets. Need ammo? We got ammo. You want to try a different gun before you buy it? We got guns to rent.
Yep.
And that's the nice thing about modern indoor ranges, that they're really obviously experienced and customer-based to provide a safe shooting environment, to give you a chance to try that should be geared around the customer. And I know there's some gun stores that have a hard time with the customer service, just because of the personality of some of the people they hire. And I get it. And I've been in those gun shops before. But a lot of these new facilities being built, indoor or outdoor alike, honestly have seen the need to be experience based for the consumer, to really get them more involved in sport, because we talked about last week, there's a big threat coming up, and we need more people involved.
Yeah, and we need to be good stewards of the Second Amendment, and having people who are responsible, B, knowledgeable, and C, friendly, to be able to help new shooters, or help accommodate people everything that they need. That's going to go a long way and make a positive experience for people. I mean, because I think, you've heard stories probably, or been, experience where you go to the range and, well, we don't have that, we're out, or, you can't get that here, and people aren't necessarily friendly. And it's like, if you have a new shooter, that's going to ruin their fun, because either you forgot something or there was something that you needed that maybe you didn't think about, or, so it's good that these new ranges are coming up.
I've been the recipient of, the receiving end of that kind of dialogue, and it's super frustrating. And I don't go around boasting like my knowledge of guns, because I don't have this vast knowledge of guns, but I have a unique experience compared to most people that go into a gun store, of working both sides of the counter, managing, a multi-million-dollar facility.
Right.
I know how it works, but I don't advertise it. But I do try to keep an eye open of how people react to me, so I can be better when I react to the public. And it's still unfortunate. There are a lot of people that are just too tactical to me, or, somebody that has to think they're they're cool to prove a point, which really it's just counterintuitive.
Well, and I think making, anybody's range experience more of a family-friendly experience, if it's a place that you would bring your kids to shoot, I think that speaks volumes, and that's really what's going to help the Second Amendment stay alive is, having a place that, and it doesn't have to be just Independence. Like you said, there's places in Utah, there's places all over the country that are clean, that are new, that are family-friendly. I think that's kind of one of the secrets to keeping the Second Amendment going.
Yeah, and spending time at SHOT Show and some of the classes they have down there in the past, the amount of people that are pursuing new ranges. I mean, there's a gentleman somewhere on the eastern side of the United States that 19, had to be 19. He was planning on building, I think it was 10 or 12 new ranges in the eastern United States. He wants to own like 35 by the time it's all said and done. And speaking to some of the vendors that deal with this gentleman personally, they're absolutely convinced he's going to hit that goal.
That's got to be a lot of money.
It's pretty amazing too, though, that like how many people has he entered into the shooting industry, into the Second Amendment? So I think it's fantastic. But yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I think it's fantastic too. It's just that's a lot of money to put up, man.
Yeah, not to backtrack, I was thinking about pricing while we were talking about. We have a lot of people complain about how much it costs to shoot at Independence. In reality, that's actually below the national average is what our prices are.
Right.
$18 for the first shooter, $15 for the second in the 25-yard bay. That's normally you're going to be spending $20-$25 in any of these ranges across the United States. And if you compared the caliber of our facility, no pun intended, the caliber of our facility compared to some of the other ones across the United States, it's, I know it's easy for me to say, but it's actually a bargain of what you're getting compared to some of the other ones around.
Well, and here's a good example of that is that, there are a lot of ranges around the country where you can't shoot rifles or you can't shoot shotguns.
Mm-hmm.
I think most ranges say that you can only shoot slugs out of shotguns. Which makes more sense because then you're not having so much ricochet problems with pellets or whatever.
And that's really what happens is those pellets bounce back.
And that happens anywhere indoors.
Yeah, and that's why we really discourage it. It's really frustrating.
But the point that I was trying to make, and I got off my own topic, but at Independence you can shoot rifle, you can shoot up to 50 cal. A lot of indoor ranges don't do that.
And capability of going full auto. I know we already addressed that, but if you look at now, you're going to get the geeky side of me coming in as far as indoor ranges, depending on what the backstop material is. So there's a lot of ranges that use a steel, an armor plated steel backstop. Well, high caliber rifles or full autos, they just destroy that steel backstop. And either way, it's going to be replaced no matter what. But when you have the intensity of impact, that just increases your wear out time. And then, that just more expense. Where a lot of the ranges now are going like we do, we have that rubber backstop where it just gets mined. And then I think it's like 5 years, you end up replacing some of it, not even all of it, but some of the backstop, which to me is way more cost effective, but it allows us to shoot those high caliber, high speed rifle rounds and full auto without any problems.
Yeah. And you can do that for the same amount of money that you could maybe pay to go just shoot at a pistols only place, so then you can,
absolutely.
You can have a better time. You'll spend a longer time there enjoying it. So really, I mean, if you think about it, you're getting more for your money. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to pay more than they have to, but if, do your research on your range, and that if you're paying $25 just to go shoot pistols at an indoor range, I would recommend trying to find another range.
Yeah. Yeah. And and who knows what the next 4 years is going to bring up. I mean, those costs could rise because of, other outside, taxes or whatever that could take place. I mean, I have no idea. I don't really want to speculate on that.
Yeah.
But those prices could change for a number of reasons. But just be patient with the range, the range staff, and because it costs, like we already said, it costs a tremendous amount of money to operate an indoor or an outdoor range, more than what people even realize. And I've even talked to people that are like, hey, I'm going to start an indoor range. And then I actually had a friend of mine over here that was going to get into it, and he was all excited and super hot and heavy. Once he realized the huge amount of money you have to come up front, that dream disappeared really quick.
Yeah, I was going to say that probably went by pretty quick.
Yeah.
If you're curious about that, you can go listen to the episode that we just released about a month ago with Jared, the owner of Independence. And I mean, he's pretty transparent about it all and how much everything costs and what it costs to run and, the economics of it. It was a fascinating interview. And if you want to learn more about that, go check that out. The other thing I was going to say, usually most ranges too, indoor and outdoor, offer memberships too. So if you shoot a lot or, you pay a certain amount a year and then you figure, okay, I have to go shooting once a month and it'll pay for itself. That might be a good way to save some money too.
Almost all ranges that I know of have a membership, an annual, and usually outdoor ranges are a little cheaper. Some of the ones on this side of the state, they're very affordable once you do like a family annual membership or whatever.
Sure.
With Independence, we have different tiers of memberships, and some of those, there might be a sticker shock involved, but you can shoot as often as the store is open. I mean, you could come every day if you wanted to. And you're not paying any more other than if you need to buy targets or ammo or whatever. But you can still bring all that stuff of your own in. So if you don't like our prices and you just want to use the range, that's still cool.
Yeah, that's fine too. And we've talked about that where, making your own targets or even just using paper plates. You don't have to go crazy on the targets. We have a lot of fun targets, but there's nothing wrong with just paper plates or even index cards.
And I totally understand that. Like I'm a tightwad too when it comes to some things. So I get it.
Yeah. But, maybe the money you save not buying targets, you could put towards a membership and, then you're saving money that way. So,
and if you own a business, and we do corporate memberships too. So, just saying there might be a corporate retreat there
or a party of some kind.
Yeah. But we can do parties.
So, and then, some places too that you got to check the rules. Usually I think this is more stereotypical. I could be wrong, but most outdoor ranges, I think, have more rules as opposed to indoor ranges. If you're on the internet at all, ever you see memes about outdoor ranges and somebody shooting more than one round every 5 seconds.
Well, yeah. And some of that has to do with containing the projectiles. Which is a big deal. And honestly, there are outdoor ranges. In fact, I think there's one in downtown Chicago somewhere that's an outdoor range. Maybe not downtown, but in the city limits.
Right.
That it's an outdoor range, but they have baffles that capture everything, so don't have to worry about somebody's house or building getting hit. But containing projectiles is a huge deal, indoor or outdoor. So that's why a lot of those outdoor ranges have those rules, is because they don't want the liability of, well, honestly, the shooter doesn't want to have to deal with that liability of hitting something that they're not supposed to.
Yeah, because there has to be some sort of contingency or something preventing or dealing with, people shooting over the berm at an outdoor range. I mean, at an indoor range, you shoot the ceiling and you might get charged, best case scenario, or you might have to replace a target retriever, which you don't want to do.
$5,000.
Yeah, unless you got that kind of money, I guess. But if if you shoot into the air and go over the berm on an outdoor range, you don't know maybe necessarily where that projectile's going, and the outdoor range has to think about that and is liable for that.
Absolutely. And another thing I was just thinking of too, and maybe this has to do with climate or weather or whatever, but maybe that range will be closed during the hottest times of the summer due to a fire risk or something too. So there's other things like that where indoor ranges normally stay open.
Yeah, you have to think about that. There's, especially out here in the West, a lot of wildfires can happen, from shooting into the ground or BLM or something like that. And so, at indoor range, you don't necessarily have to worry about that unless the place you're going to isn't clean. Remember that video? There's a video floating around of, I think it was a police range or something, and there was so much gunpowder on the floor that somebody shot into the floor.
Flash fire?
Yeah, and it started a fire.
That's not completely uncommon. I'm not going to lie.
Well, it depends on the range. If it's not cleaned regularly or,
if they're taking care of their SOPs, their operating procedures and maintaining that range, it's never an issue. But a lot of a lot of ranges get lazy.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting too is that technology is kind of bringing the indoor and outdoor ranges together. More like we've talked about, mostly on outdoor ranges, you can do more dynamic kind of shooting, or there's moving targets and all that kind of stuff. But at Independence and other places, you can go in front of the line in different classes and move around a little bit. And there are target retriever systems now that will spin around or move at certain indoor ranges, and you're able to get a little bit better training that way, maybe with reaction time and stuff. And even you told me about the sporting clays or the shotgun range in Utah.
Oh yeah, that's at TNT, that indoor shotgun range.
Yeah, there's an indoor shotgun clays range, right?
Yep, that's TNT, and it's pretty cool. It was the first one. I think there's more now, but it was the first in the United States of its kind, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, as far as you can tell, I think it's the only indoor shotgun range in the U.S. at least. Yeah,
and that was one of Action Target's, and that's the same company that did our retriever system. That was one of their big, that was one of their benchmarks, right? Was to be able to put one of those in the U.S. and TNT was able to make that happen in their facility, which I think is really cool. Now, obviously, it's not like going to shoot it at a normal shotgun or trap range or whatever you want to call it. It's not near the same, but it's still pretty amazing.
I mean, I would try it. I can't shoot clays or trap to save my life, but I would give it a whirl, man. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I suck at shotguns.
Well, they're hard. They're a hard thing to learn and to do well. But and I think
I can hit things with slugs from a long ways away.
Sure.
But when it comes to making sure that pattern's tight for a bird in the air, no, I suck.
Yep, I do too. So maybe we need to figure out how to get better.
Oh, I know how to do it. It just costs me money.
Oh, there's that. So
I have to buy the nicest shotgun around. That's what it is.
Yeah, so get $100,000 and you're good to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really depends on, if you want to go to an indoor or an outdoor range, if you're debating which one to go to. I'd say if you're a new shooter or you're bringing around new shooters, I think an indoor range is probably the better way to go.
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think as far as the safety standpoint, it's probably going to be better. Now, like we said, it's going to be noisier and the flinch factor is going to be there more for new shooters. But I think the dividends pay off a little bit better on an indoor range. Unless you're good at teaching and you spend a lot of time, maybe you've taken some instructor classes. That might be a little different where you can spend some time on an outdoor range and not have to worry about it as much.
For sure.
For me, safety is always the number one thing. So even if I'm taking a group of scouts out, if we go outside shooting or something, I try to maintain still somewhat of a formal range structure while we're out.
For sure. And I would say, honestly, another good case scenario is that if you have your own land too, and you are good at instruction and safety conscious or whatever, then you have a new shooter, you could teach them there too, because then you're not necessarily around other people or other loud guns to spook them or anything like that.
Right.
But if you're, maybe in a metropolitan area or whatever, I think it's a little more easy and convenient to go to an indoor range. But I love going out to outdoor ranges too. I mean, love being outside, and if it's a perfect day out there, and you can spend a lot more time. The other thing I would say is if you want to spend a day out at the range and really enjoying it and make it kind of slow paced but effective, the outdoor range is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I think so. As long as we talked about the safety protocols and stuff, that kind of range etiquette. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And then I think we talked about it a little bit too, but most ranges indoor are only 25 to 50 yards tops. At Independence, we have the 100-yard rifle range, which is pretty cool and not very common. Yeah. But there are outdoor ranges, the bigger ones. I mean, you can go out to 500 yards or even longer. Some, I think, even specialize in super long range.
There's one just outside of a park not far from here that we talked about earlier today off the air that 1,000 yards. I think they might even be at 17 now.
Wow.
17 under. So I think you can get a mile out there now.
That's crazy. So, and that's something that I don't think anybody's ever going to be able to replicate in an indoor range. I mean, you can make a small target that kind of compensates and blah, blah, at 100 yards. It really is this or whatever, but I don't think there's anything that any way you can replicate being,
I know that,
out that far.
I know for a fact that Barrett, the company that Barrett Firearms,
right,
they were working on a 500-yard indoor range. I know that for a fact because I talked to Chris Barrett about it. And not that we're tight and I'm name dropping, but he happened to be in the same building that I was at the same time talking about guns and ranges, and it came up, which is kind of cool.
That is pretty cool. But
that was several years ago. I don't know if they made it happen or not.
Maybe they're probably still trying to build it. That's a lot of,
500 yards.
That's 5 times as long as our range.
Yeah. But when you're a multi-million-dollar firearms company, I guess you can.
You can do whatever you want. So, but yeah, it just depends on really what you're looking for. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. It just depends on what you're trying to do with your range time is what you would, and obviously distance and from your house and finances. There's a lot of different factors that go into it.
There's a bunch of factors in there. But it's still worth at least trying one or the other out at least one time. So at least you understand, hey, this is what it's really like there. Don't just listen to, your buddy's reports or something you might have read online. Even, we get negative reviews, which is, that's just part of the deal. Don't reference up any negative reviews of somebody else's opinion. Go to that range and see what it's like. If there's a safety concern in one of those comments, or your buddy says, hey, don't go here because it's really unsafe, be wary. Still go check it out.
Sure.
You don't even have to shoot. Most ranges will let you walk back there and at least check it out before you spend the money. It's worth it to try either way.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you're safety conscious no matter what. And if you feel unsafe at any range, indoor or outdoor, don't hesitate to leave, and before you plunk down the money or anything like that. I think reviews have come a long way. There's not as many negative reviews anymore. But if you go to our Google reviews, there's a couple of 1-star reviews right up there. You know what I mean? But it happens.
Yeah. And some of those, and maybe they got taken down. Some of those, well, never mind. I'm not going to get into it. But some of those are just so false and blatant on purpose that.
But you're going to find that at any establishment, gun, firearms, or otherwise. Yeah. So, but if you have any questions about indoor or outdoor ranges or anything, let us know. podcast@iishooting.com, or want to talk about some cool stuff you've seen at a range maybe we didn't cover. Let us know. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram @Range-Minded Podcast.
Yeah, and let us know maybe what you think, what you liked about one or the other more, and put it on our Facebook feed.
Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe we'll feature you.
That'd be great.
So, all right.
And I got it one more time. Right on Optics. I can't remember. I think I might have been given the wrong promo code out.
No.
And I put a video out a couple days ago about it. So if you're looking for Right On Optics, you can jump on their website, rightonoptics.com. If you want to, you can save 15% on any purchase on that website by using the promo code S Zimmerman with 1 N at checkout. It'll save you 15%. I can't remember if I've been giving out the wrong one before that or not, but that's what it is.
That sounds right. So just S Zimmerman with 1 N at the end.
Yeah.
So use that one. Get 15% off. That would be fantastic. Also, we'll have to talk more about this in another episode, and we'll put it on our Instagram and Facebook as well. But I got my Walther P38 holster back from Nick Hoffer.
You did.
And
I'm excited to see it.
It is pretty awesome.
I'm excited to see it now. That's cool.
It looks like a modern day, holster for any gun, but it's got the extended, space for the barrel, and it's super cool. So I'll have to get
one of a kind.
I would say it's one of a kind. It's and not only because it's for a Walther P38, but it's a Kydex holster for a Walther P38 outside the waistband for a lefty.
That's cool, man. That's really cool.
Nick works wonders, man.
And I'm going to throw a free plug out for him because we both really like Nick a lot. So Hoftac holsters,
You can go to hoftac.com. I think that's what it is, right? Hoftac.
Yeah, or Google Hoftac Industries, and also the Ultimate Hybrid Holster. That's his new one for a lot of different kinds of guns. So we'll have him on again. He's good people.
Yeah, and that's the official holster of Range Minded. So
yeah, but check out our social medias for the photo of that holster, and leave us some feedback while you're there. Tell us about your local range, and thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good one. Be safe.
Yes, be safe. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.